Hey everybody, this video is about sex and hormones. It's about sex and hormones in women. I'm Dr. Diane Mueller, your libido doc. And in this video, our purpose is to break down what hormones are related to sex, how you can think about them, what to do about them. We'll talk a little bit about HRT and how this all fits together. And one of the things I want to make sure you understand here is that when we're talking about hormones and sex, we're not just talking about things like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. We're also talking about thyroid hormone, adrenal hormones, which produce our energy and our stress hormones, as well as brain hormones called neurotransmitters, which help make us happy, and they help with desire and motivation and all of these other things. So there's a lot to this whole sex and hormones conversation. So another thing I want to make sure to talk about in this video is what hormones should you get tested? Because I often see people are not getting a full hormone picture tested, and it's only giving them a piece of the problem, a piece of the puzzle, and other pieces are missed. So also as we go through these, know that if you're taking notes, you're going to bring this to your doctor, know that there's information in the show notes about how to work with me and how to get lab testing done direct to consumer yourself so that you can actually find the answers that you need. So firstly, let's talk about testosterone. So for women need testosterone just like men. Testosterone is really tested for best in two parts. There's the total amount of testosterone, so it's called a total testosterone. This is essentially what your body makes, but you also want to make sure that you have in your testing free testosterone. So total is what your body is making. Free testosterone is what your cells actually can use. So if you're making all of this testosterone, but your cells can't use it, that doesn't really do you any good. So you want to make sure you're understanding the total plus what can be used, and that is called the free testosterone. So estrogen is another important one to cover because it does help with sex drive, it helps with desire, it helps with lubrication, but estrogen testing is a little bit complex as well. So there's three different types of estrogen known as E1, E2, and E3. Now, premenopausal, we pretty much have predominantly E2. E2 is estradiol. It's really proliferative. It helps our cells grow and multiply. That's how we are preparing our uterus for the ovulation, right? It's making that lining really thick and robust, right? So the estrogen helps to really help the cells to proliferate. Now, that's great, and it's also going to be the strongest as far as sex drive. Postmenopausal, we make E1. E1 is estrone. It's a weaker form of estrogen, but that will be the dominant estrogen postmenopausal. Now, oftentimes when people get tested, it's either estradiol or total, this combination of all the E1, E2, E3. But what's important to understand in conversation with sex is E3. E3 is estradiol. E3 is amazing for helping with vaginal lubrication. So if you have really high or normal levels of E1 and E2, but you don't have enough E3, you might still have some lubrication slowness or maybe difficulty lubricating. And while I am a big proponent of lube, and I think lube is wonderful, definitely you still want to make sure you have enough E3 so you can also help to self-lubricate. And that's oftentimes missing in common hormonal testing, right? Progesterone is also really important. It also supports healthy estrogen and testosterone responses. So you want good progesterone levels. DHEA. DHEA is one of my favorite hormones out there. It's actually a precursor hormone. So we take DHEA, we turn it into estrogen and testosterone. But it by itself helps with energy, helps with drive, and it's also been hugely associated with anti-aging. So make sure you get DHEA looked at. It's best found in blood in its storage form, which is called DHEAS. That's the best marker for it. So make sure you're looking for that. And then, of course, thyroid. So we want to understand that thyroid and adrenal hormones also impact sex drive. So for thyroid, a lot of people are just looking at TSH and saying, oh, I'm normal. TSH is actually a brain hormone. It tells the thyroid to work. And TSH can be perfectly normal, meaning your brain is working wonderfully, but it's not, your brain is not telling your thyroid, it's not communicating with your thyroid to work. So in that particular situation, you could have a normal TSH and then the thyroid's not responding, and you're going to miss that if you just are looking for the TSH. So at a minimum, you want TSH run as well as something called free T3 and free T4, which are your thyroid hormones. The T3 and T4 are your thyroid hormones themselves. So we want to make sure we're looking at that whole picture. With the adrenal glands are, they produce our stress hormones, our hormones that help us with energy. And one of the adrenal hormones I've not mentioned is cortisol. Cortisol, a lot of people think belly fat, bad, right? But it's not bad. It's actually good, right? If you guys didn't have cortisol, if we didn't have cortisol, if I didn't have cortisol, if you didn't have cortisol, we would be in the hospital. It's that crucially important for your health and for your energy and for blood sugar stabilization and so much more. But of course, too much is also a bad thing, right? And it can lead to abdominal weight gain. It can lead to anxiety. It can lead to chronic fatigue syndrome, so many other things. So we want to make sure it's that right balance, and really can be related to sex drive as well, because overwhelm, stress, rushing, for most women, I find that leads them to lower their sex drive. There are people that actually have the opposite thing occur, and that perhaps is you. But for most women, I do find that too much stress, too much overwhelm, too much rushing will actually lead to lowering of their libido, lowering of their sex drive. So we want to look at those stress hormones. And of course, we want to consider brain hormones, dopamine, serotonin. These are the hormones that are about happiness. These are also the hormones that drive us in new relationships, right? So essentially, when there's all this novelty and it's new, we're getting huge dopamine hits. So our brain is actually kind of on drugs, really, because that newness, that excitement will trigger extra dopamine to be released. And that's where there's a lot of relationship with novelty and desire and passion is through that dopamine response. So one of the things, and I talk about more of this on other videos in the channel, so please do subscribe to get all these. One of the things that I do talk about is this novelty response, right? So this familiarity, when we have this novelty versus familiarity, it's almost like this pulse. So novelty in new relationships stimulates oftentimes a lot of desire. We get this huge dopamine rush. It feels really good. And at the other side of things, there's familiarity. And familiarity helps with safeness. And sometimes when we feel really safe, we can even drop deeper into our pleasure. But we lose that desire sometimes because the dopamine's not always there. So I really, really appreciate finding ways of keeping in long relationships, finding ways to keep things novel and exciting, which I do talk about in other videos, but that we want to continue to do that so we get that dopamine boost to our brain, because dopamine is about motivation, it's about desire, it's about taking action. And so we want to make sure that when it comes to our sex lives, we're doing things to keep things novel in long-term relationships, so we keep our dopamine signal high, and that will also stimulate that desire. So I hope this helps. Please do leave any questions or comments here in the show notes. Information about working with me is also found below. And have a great day. I'll see you guys next time.